Welcome everybody back to Buford Pusser, the other story, and back by popular demand, I've got Dennis Hathcock here tonight. Dennis, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you doing, Mike?
I'm absolutely bodacious. It's a weekend, so I'm using the $5 words.
Me too.
All right, let's get into this. You know, in the Saturday short, we talked about a little bit of everything, mostly the routes that Buford could have gone the day of the ambush, but didn't. All of them would have been a lot faster than the one that he took. And we also discussed the fact that there were a lot of routes that he could have taken that would not have taken him by the church. So you have to ask, was it a coincidence he went by the church? Was it a coincidence that you had an ambush party waiting there for him? Or basically, was it a pre-planned thing? Any thoughts there?
I'm like you. I've never understood how that they could be planning to ambush him. If you wanted to ambush somebody, they just wait till he walked out of his house and ambush him or whatever. I mean, of course, I don't believe it was an ambush, though.
Well, there's so many ways that they could have done it. I mean, a rolling ambush has never made sense to me because there's so many things that come into play there that would have made it difficult to pull it off. And obviously, if it was an ambush, they didn't pull it off. But personally, I look at a lot of other things. For instance, like Buford was telling people 4 weeks before the ambush that he was supposed to be stalked and killed.
That's right.
And, Jim Moffitt, he had told Jim Moffitt that. And, Jim made that statement to newspapers a little bit later. And, I think that fueled the speculation that there was an ambush when that may have been nothing more than pre-planning on Buford's part. Start the story early and then already have it prepared and ready to come into play whenever the ambush did take place. But
I believe if somebody had told me that they were planning to ambush me and what all he said they told him and everything, I don't believe I'd have let my wife ride with me.
Well, I know I wouldn't have.
at 4 o'clock in the morning, down there where I thought that all of them were at that was going to kill me. So,
yeah,
that don't even make sense. It don't even make sense.
No, it doesn't. But then also, another thing that really kind of catches you is the fact that allegedly the first call came in to his dad, Carl, there at the sheriff's office. And the second call went to Buford at his home. I've got to wonder if there was a first call made to Carl, if that was designed more as a cover story for Buford.
That's what I would think.
At any rate, when the ambush first took place, investigators didn't have much of an idea about what had happened. I mean, Buford wasn't able to say much or wasn't saying much. They'd taken him to Memphis, so he was out of pocket right at the moment. Investigators were going down there to the two ambush scenes and trying to make heads and tails of that and not having a whole lot of luck. They were looking at snipers' lairs and everything else. Initially, at first they didn't know that there was a rolling ambush that was alleged to have taken place. And Buford wasn't making any public statements about anything at that point in time.
Well, I've told you that when Petey got there, he tried to make it appear at that little bridge that there were snipers there. Yeah. And they was over in this grass. I can see where they tromped it down on the grass. And the more I've thought about it, the more I've thought they were trying to lead everybody to believe and hoping that they would never find that other side, I don't believe.
Well, I think where they really messed up was, the fact that Petey's Petey was out there trampling around in the grass on the wrong side of the car. All the bullets came in on the driver's side, and he was out there on the passenger side, claiming that there was a sniper's lair.
Right.
So maybe that was just a little miscommunication on his and Buford's part, or maybe it was just Petey doing his own thing, trying to set things up the way that he wanted them to come out. But then you also had, John Pusser coming out, Buford's brother, after the surgery, and saying that Buford didn't know who his attackers were. And then Ben Pusser, his uncle, also came out and said, well, they've had it in for Buford for a long time. And of course, he was referring to moonshiners and bootleggers. No one specific, no one that you could really put a pin in. And, that's kind of bothered me in a way, because you would think if he and Buford had talked about it enough for Ben to have known that, he might have given some names. But then also, something a lot of people don't know is that Hugh Kirkpatrick and Buford were related on Helen's side of the family.
Right.
And, he was saying, even before the investigation had really started, that he had a good idea about who was behind it, but he didn't want to name any names just yet. And yet, nothing ever come of any of that. It kind of makes me wonder, did the investigators have tunnel vision? Were they so focused on moonshiners and bootleggers and state liners that they never considered Buford?
Well, I honestly believe that Warren Jones believed, I don't know that he did it. I think Warren Jones thought Pusser killed her. But I believe that kind of before that, when Pusser first got elected, Warren Jones believed a lot of that crap about all the whiskey steals. And they were whiskey steals, but
sure,
you never heard of nobody getting killed, all the killings and all that kind of stuff back then. That's, well, what Jim Moffitt said.
Yeah, after, are you talking about after Louise was killed?
No. He was talking about how long he'd been a deputy, and he never had nobody even raise a hand to him. Or
said as long as he was there, he was never in so much as a fight.
Right.
And so, you have to wonder why all these people are coming out after Buford, but yet Petey didn't get in any scrapes that we know of. Jim didn't get in any scrapes that we know of. It was always just Buford. That kind of takes us on to the ambush that we might get into, since that's what this episode is supposed to be about. But, Buford said that Pauline insisted on going with him. And that be that as it may, he said that when they got down to the bridge is when the car turned on its headlights and shots were fired. Now, the thing that kind of gets you when you go back through all this is that he did say that she was hit by one of the first shots, that she was gurgling blood, gasping for air, and she reached over and grabbed him by the arm. And of course, he insisted that he punched the gas, didn't stop for 2 miles. And as he started to get out of his car, they came upon him again, started shooting, and that he got hit in the chin. He went to the floorboard, which he claimed probably saved his life. In the meantime, Pauline gets hit a second time in the head, and he insisted that was when she was killed. But, you see others like Warren Jones was saying, hey, she got killed at the first ambush site. Now, how could that be? Doesn't make sense.
None of it makes sense. None of it. But think about this. If your wife was with you and she got shot, all that first part, how in the world, if he outran the assailants, if he outran them and in just 2 miles he stopped, where did he pass them to outrun them? I mean, because there's no roads that turned off down through there.
No roads, no driveways to speak of, nothing. Just
there wasn't but 1 or 2 houses down through there. I mean, where were they at? Then they came back up behind him.
But it's a mystery, you know.
Yeah.
You know, the other part that got me was, of course, I've had this out on my Facebook page, and I think I've probably had it out here on the YouTube channel, where that Buford claimed that after a little while, he kind of came back to himself, reached up, grabbed the steering wheel, pulled himself back up on the seat, and his car was still sitting there, and the rifle hanging out the window, and they pointed it over his direction again, and he grabbed it by the barrel. Now, I have to wonder, do we really expect anybody to believe that? I mean, if he was unconscious or even semi-conscious for a little while, laying there on the floorboard, why wouldn't they get out and just finish the job that they were there for in the first place?
Excellent question.
It makes no sense.
But a lot of stuff in wrestling don't make sense.
You know, he did have some training there, and you know, wrestling is all drama, and it seems like this is a lot of drama that he put into his story. And you know, he had people just chasing wild tails. To me, it seems like, you know, like I said he grabbed the barrel of that rifle, and that he held on to it until they sped away. And it's just a bizarre thing. I don't know how to describe it. I've often wondered, do you think that part of the reason that the investigation didn't go well was that there was a lot of fear, probably among different people that feared Buford, people in high places?
Right. They did.
Well,
I'm going to tell you this. I'll tell it on this. My dad, everybody knows who my dad was. He always said that Warren Jones was afraid of Buford.
Any idea?
The more you look at it, the more you think that may be true.
Well, I mean, I look at everybody in this. You've got to question everybody. Right down the list. Will Terry Abernathy, he was the prosecutor, and
right.
It seemed like the investigation went nowhere. You had Harry Peeler, the medical examiner. You know, I'm sure that he saw enough to know that something was amiss here, and yet we didn't hear anything out of him. Petey Plunk, I don't think we expected to hear anything out of him except what he would tell later on, because he would really try to shore up Buford's story. But then you have Judge Treese. Judge Treese went down there with him to the ambush scene that morning and looked things over, and I don't know what his thoughts were. I know that Buford didn't seem to have any fear of Judge Treese because, from what I understand, he would get Hoyt, the judge's son, and slap him around and take him home.
Right, backhand him.
I'll tell you what, I'm going to have Wayne on again here before long and tell that story. You know,
it's the truth.
I first heard it and didn't know quite what to think of it. And, you know, there's a lot of things like that happened where you would think Judge Treese would say enough is enough, but yet it didn't happen. So you had to wonder if the judge might have a little fear of Buford. I mean, after all, you think about it, if everybody,
Mike, I'm not so sure that it was fear. That I know with Judge Treese, he drove without driver's license.
Yeah.
He get out of DWI, they pulled his life. I think, honestly, Will Terry may have been in the same boat.
Who knows?
I know Will Terry drank a little, about all of those people did. Of course, they hid it. But back in those days, people make the biggest ordeals ever been if you was drinking or you held a public office and they found out you drank, or in this part of the country.
Well, it was part of the Bible Belt. It was the buckle of the Bible Belt.
Right.
But, there had to be something there that none of these guys, I think, would step up and just come out and say, hey, we've got to consider Buford as a suspect. I've never understood why they didn't. But then you move on from that and you get to looking at all the people that were never interviewed that probably should have been. I mean, you go down the list. You've got Levon Plunk.
Right.
Usually one of the first things you do in a homicide investigation is you interview friends and family. Not necessarily in that order, but Levon Plunk was never interviewed. I don't know if they asked Petey any questions. Of course, you had Ward Moore, the coroner, who would have had something to share about that night had he been interviewed. You had Rod Province and his wife. I understand that there's certain things that they knew that they probably weren't asked about. There's Mike, Diane, Helen. Of course, I do know that they interviewed Carl because they wanted to know more about his story of that call coming in at 2 and him not dispatching anybody out, and the caller finally deciding to call Buford at home. So, he may be the only one we know for sure that was interviewed. So, just a strange thing. There's a lot to this investigation that we haven't touched on yet, but I wanted to get all this out there for people to think about. Rolling ambush is rare. You just don't hear of it. But it made for a good story. And it also made for a good story when he said he was going to be stalked and killed. Then you take Paul.
He had a premonition.
Oh, could have been. But, Pauline, the story about her reaching over, taking him by the arm, and while she was gurgling blood and gasping for air, most head wounds. I mean, if he got shot in the chin and it knocked him unconscious or semi-unconscious, but yet she gets shot in the head and she's still able to do all that. Somehow that doesn't add up. So at any rate, it just makes me wonder about the whole ordeal. It's like we've shown in the past few episodes, trying to drive down through there with no headlights. Be sure and hit that subscribe button for notifications of future videos, and be sure and leave your comments at the end of this video. I don't see how an ambush party caught up with him in the first place, so that all this other stuff could happen. I don't know why he didn't, when he got down to 45, why he didn't turn left and go to Corinth rather than turn right and go to Selmer, which was 3 times the distance. He's bleeding. I don't know if he was sure about Pauline at that point in time, but you would think that you would want to get to the closest health care possible. And the Corinth Hospital was a whole lot closer and better equipped than was that in Selmer.
Well, Mike, I told you, and I finally found a cop where Petey Plunk claimed instead of him turning back towards Selmer, he went on across the state line and went to where the Plantation Club was and drove around the Plantation Club and then came back. I believe if my wife was laying over there with the top of her head blowed off, I wouldn't worry about driving by the plantation club.
Well, I wonder if that's just more manufactured story.
Oh, I know it is. I'm quite sure it is, but
Well,
it's just like a low
why go to the
budget.
plantation club? Because it wasn't even open any longer.
It wasn't even there. It burned by then.
So there you have that.
Uh, it's just like a real low budget movie.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm serious. I
I know
mean,
what
it's
you
just
mean. I know what you mean.
like a bunch of kids would make.
I think I doubt that Petey knew anything in advance. I think that he was probably just trying to make the best path for Buford. Uh,
Well, that was his bread and butter. So
yeah, and I've heard that even Petey was afraid of Buford. So,
well, yeah, you know what O'Neill told? O'Neill told, uh,
well, go ahead.
you know, well, after he killed Louise, he quit right after that and told his wife and told O'Neill and one of the girls. I believe I've heard O'Neill tell it 2 or 3 times. Told me that he told his wife and them that if something happened to him, to tell him to look at Buford Pusser.
Yep.
And he quit. But then I don't know how long, he took off 2 or 3 weeks, and then I think Pusser came back and offered him more. And I don't think a lot of people understand either that
The need.
O'Neill's dad, Jim, they had a pretty rough life.
That was the best job
And
Jim ever had.
that was the best job Jim Moffitt had ever had.
And
And he's furnished with a car, furnished with gas. I mean, I understand. I understand a lot of it, but
well,
it's just
something a lot of people don't understand is the size of Jim's family.
right.
I mean, he had several kids, and some of them adopted.
That's right.
So, he's having to think about the bigger picture that, hey, he's walking away from a salary, transportation, so on. And nothing had ever happened to him up to that point. And, but like you say, I think he was getting very suspicious that something could happen to him, just from what he said to O'Neill and his mom or his wife.
Well, you was talking about Judge Treese. It's the same thing. Look how many kids they had.
Yeah.
And not only how many kids they had, they were taking some kids, raising them that didn't have a family or had been taken away from their family. They were taking, I don't know, they had 4 or 5 of them.
Yeah.
So there's a lot more to the story than.
Well, and it's like Wayne said the other night, was telling me, said, he and Hoyt were close, and he kind of looked at Judge Treese as an adopted father.
Yeah.
Because Judge Treese never complained when he would come down and spend a weekend with Hoyt, just because he didn't really have a bed or any privacy to go to there at his own folks' place. So he'd stay with the Treeses. So
I'd spend the night with Hoyt, and the next morning, Inez, that was his mother.
Yeah.
Oh, she'd cook a big breakfast for everybody, and there'd be Darwin, Darrell. I mean, just tons of you couldn't believe how many are sitting at the table there. All of them with their kids.
Like a mess hall. So, at any rate, maybe I hope people think about what all we're saying here tonight is that there are so many loose ends to this story. And you have to wonder why they never looked at Buford. Maybe they did. I do want to say and make this clear, while I kind of talk bad about the TBI, that was the TBI of 1967.
Right.
FBI today is a totally different animal. Uh, they're a self-standing agency. They don't have to answer to a lot of people like they did back in the 60s. They've got
Right.
a statue out now. Everybody keeps asking me about the autopsy report, like I know something that they don't.
Right.
And
Well, they ask me constantly.
oh yeah, and
Uh,
all I can say is, you guys will know when I know because I haven't heard a thing, and I won't hear a thing until they're ready to release it, whenever that is. I don't know. I have an idea. Don't have any idea why it's taken so long, but there's a reason, I'm sure. So,
well, I can tell you, I do know this, that there's some part of the autopsy that they couldn't do, that they had to send to the FBI.
oh, really?
And yeah, and if you've ever dealt with them, they
That's a
get
slow
in
process.
no kind of hurry whatsoever. Of course, you got to go think about how much is backlogged when they get something.
With all terrorism and everything that's going on these days, the FBI is taking, uh, active threats and cases first, and this is something kind of goes to the back burner. You know, they get to it when they can. So
Right.
there is that.
Well, another thing, Mike, I don't know if very many people realize something about the TBI in Tennessee. It's probably one of the nation's top forensic labs. They have it here in Tennessee.
Yeah.
I mean, it's compatible. I mean, you could compare it to the FBI, their labs, but I mean, of course, they've got unlimited money to do whatever they want to.
You're talking about the FBI there.
Yeah, they have some. I'm sure that they have things that nobody ever heard of that they're
yeah. Lots of
can do in
techniques,
forensics.
practices, tools
Right.
that a lot of agencies just don't have yet. But at any rate, I just want to say there's a clear difference, and I'm sure a lot of people look when you say TBI, they look at everything as back then the same as now, and it's not. I just wanted to be clear about that. It's
Yeah.
all I can say is that uh, you know they've been responsive to anything that I've had to say, I guess. Although they don't share anything with me. So,
No, they don't meet.
You just roll with it and hope it all comes out in the wash. And one of these days it will. I'm pretty confident of that. I think there wouldn't have been a exhumation of Pauline had they not had some suspicion that they hadn't been able to answer.
I asked some guy on your forum there. I said, he was talking about what this and that, and I said, well, surely you've got better sense than to think that the TBI has nothing else to do except sit around and think about, well, let's go over here and exhume. I tell you what, let's exhume Pauline Pusser's body and just see what. Yeah, I mean, that cost them a lot of money too.
Oh yeah. Well, I don't know how familiar you are with what I do, but like of course, since all this has come up, I follow what they're doing, but I also follow the Arkansas State Police. I follow the Benton County Sheriff's Office. Right. I follow the Washington County Sheriff's Office and the McDonald County Sheriff's Office that surround me, because I just like to try and know what's going on, because there's a lot of things that from your background that you just I guess that once you're in law enforcement, you never totally get away from it. You still have those curiosities and things like that. So I follow it all pretty heavy, but just like with following what they do, you can go on their website and see that they are just snowed under with work.
Right.
So It just takes a while. And cold cases are uh, cases that have been inactive, is I guess the way I should put it. Uh, they don't take the priority. But be that as it may, uh, I just wanted to say how much I appreciated you being on here again. Uh, it's
Well,
always a good
I'm
time.
glad.
And
I'm glad. But Mike, if you were talking about the TBI, we've had in West Tennessee in the last, I'll say the last month nearly. There's no telling. There's been 4 or 5 bodies that they found that they're having to have the TBI try to identify.
well, Dennis, it's popped up here on my screen that we're running out of time.
Okay. Well, let's.
So we're going to have to wind this thing up. But again, I appreciate you being here. We'll get back together and do this again. I don't know why, but people enjoy watching you give your perspective on things. But you've got a fan base.
Have you told them that have you told them they're kicking the Holly Bobo thing off again?
Yeah, I know I haven't, but I understand that they are.
It kicked it off this week.
Yeah. Always something. Well, Dennis, have a good one, and we'll be talking.
Well, you have a good one, Mike.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you.